All right. So how are you, Eva?
Hi, I'm good. I'm ready to talk about the erotic, my favorite topic ever.
All right. Yay.
Yay.
So let's take a deep breath in. Ah. We are here with the amazing, exquisite, sexy, sensual, and very smart Eva Clay.
Oh,
Eva is an acclaimed sexologist and psychotherapist whose mission is to illuminate the menage a trois of soul, sex, and science. She's helped thousands of people unlock their innate potential for pleasure. And as a former professor of neuroscience, she bodaciously reminds us that smart is sexy. Her work is an elegant marriage of the profound and the playful, and has been a practitioner of sexual Tantra for over a decade. She's been featured as an expert in major media appearances, including Vice, Sexy Fit, Truth Telling, Superpower Experts, and the Sassy and Single Show. She is a regular guest on the Channel Q and has appeared as a keynote speaker at the Wanderlust Yoga Festivals. This is Eva Clay. So happy to have you, Eva. And I wanted to share this little story about years ago. I met you at Lightning in the Bottle, and we were in line. This was a long time ago. We were in line for the bathrooms, and you turned to me and you're like, you were definitely going through your process, and you're like, yeah, I can't deny it any longer. I'm a tantrika. And it made me laugh because here you are. I mean, you, since then, you have really started your work in the sex, being such a powerhouse for so many women's empowerment in the field of sexuality, and just generally allowing women to come into the truth of who they really are. So I'd love to just open up, if you could just tell us a little bit about what made you get into this area. What brought you here?
yeah, thanks, Shezza. By the way, I don't remember that moment, not surprisingly, but it sounds like me. And I was definitely in this journey, coming from being a conventional Western psychotherapist and neuroscience teacher into a sex geek, and so you caught me right at that moment, which is exactly where I strive to lead women into the recognition, and men, into the recognition of who they really are through the prism of the erotic. And so, what led me to this in the brief is that I have just always been a sex geek. I've always been super interested in that. And from a more academic perspective. And it wasn't until I had my own, sexual awakening that I realized, wow, like I need to teach this. And I am always fascinated about what empowers people, especially women. Like I'm here really to raise the feminine. And so in my very academic way, I've looked over the years, over 25 years of like what works, and tried many different modalities and so many certifications and teachings. And I just love sinking my teeth into that stuff. But what I realized is that there's really almost nothing more powerful and more effective to raise women than the erotic. And so that's really where I have focused in the last decade. And I'm in love with it. I'm born to do this.
Babe, I feel you are born to do this. It's so hot and awesome. And can you please tell us, how do you define the erotic?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, there's a lot of misperception around what is the erotic. And I love that I'm going first in your summit, the ecstatic awakening summit, because I feel like I'm going to justify the rest of the speakers. Yes. And really open the doors. And hopefully you all watching this will watch everyone here because it's so rich. I want to distinguish the erotic from the sexual. And many people kind of use those words interchangeably, but they're actually not interchangeable. They're very different. And in my paradigm. I always say, like, if you want to have a sexual awakening, it happens between the legs. But to have an erotic awakening happens between the ears. The erotic is our primordial life force. It dwells in the imagination. It dwells in the context that we swim in. It dwells in mystery, in anticipation. It dwells in our heart. You know, we pulled a card right before we went live together about our talk, and it was about coming from the heart. The erotic lives in passion. It lives in our emotional body. And for women to be in touch with their emotional body, I feel like is so central and integral to the way that we will rise and lead the planet today, I believe. So the erotic is to be distinguished here from the sexual. And I talk about both, and I will talk about both in our conversation. But so I invite you, if you're watching, to tune into, what does erotic mean to you? What images do you conjure when you think of that word? And usually it has a little bit more shadow, a little bit more depth. Look at, as my body's moving as I'm saying this, it has a certain play about it, right? And it's not directly sexual, but it's one step removed from the sexual. There's a space between the sexual and the erotic that is so scintillating. That's where I feel our most alive state lives.
I'm so totally turned on by what you're talking about. And the reason is because I've considered myself a Tantra teacher, which I've become a little bit unsure of whether to use that term because it just means so many different things to so many different people. But I also don't want to just be a sex teacher, because there was a moment in my life years ago when I had such a sexual awakening. I was having orgasm after orgasm after orgasm, but was I really in my power? No, absolutely not. And so a lot of people come, wanting a lot more orgasms, but that does not equal power. And what you're talking about is exactly the thing that I've been trying to put my finger on, which is, how do we tap into our power and make it sexy?
Yes, yes. Oh my God. Can I drop a little science on that?
Please. Yeah. We wanted to just share what different teachers Eva and I are, because I go into whole retreats with no plan, and Eva's a science geek, so she's got all of her
notes for today. Okay, so that's how we roll. And okay, so I'm going to drop a little science. Okay. All right, so part of the science of this, because I'm so into this convergence, the place where the scientific intersects with the esoteric. And we can look at eroticism from the esoteric, which is the mythopoetic erotic. The erotic is what happens behind the veil that we can't see, but we sense. It has a quality, it's ineffable, it's intangible. And so the science of that is this: when we move into a state of arousal in our body, or any kind of pleasure, let's say if you're eating a delicious fruit or you're making love with your partner, the brain releases this incredible cocktail, I call it the pleasure cocktail, of neurohormones and uber neurotransmitters. Just trust me, that's good. We want those. And these neurotransmitters and these sex hormones make us amazing. They turn us into super women. They make us more confident, more talkative, more assertive, more motivated, more focused, right? They make us more creative. If you think about after you've had a really juicy, particularly connected sexual experience, how do you feel? You feel amazing. You want you walk out, you're like, I'm the queen of the world, and you can conquer anything, and you want to write a book or you want to cook. And this is the pleasure cocktail working in your body. It's like a super vitamin. And now there are two grades of pleasure cocktail. So imagine there's a grade A pleasure cocktail that absolutely floods your body. It infuses your cells with all of these good feelings and motivation, and it boosts your self-esteem, on and on and on. And then there's grade B pleasure cocktail, which is still good, but like kind of like less. And I'm hacking the science here, by the way. So this is just a metaphor I'm using. Grade A pleasure cocktail, grade B. When we're in orgasm and when we're in the peak of our sexual arousal, we get grade B. We get grade B pleasure cocktail in our brain. When we're in a lower grade, prolonged state of arousal, and this is so much what Tantra is about, is delaying that climax, right? When we're in like, if you have a pleasure dial 0 to 10, if you're hanging out at right about a 5, like 4, 5, 6, 7 in that zone, you get grade A pleasure cocktail. And oh my God, this is what we want. And this is what women need in order to rise. So that's why I am so into the erotic, because that state of like low level turn on and anticipation, like let's say you just met someone and you're about to have a first date and you're getting dressed up and you're like, oh my God, he's so, or she's so amazing and beautiful. Or like you just had a first date, or you can't wait to see your lover next week. Like that's the erotic in action in the body. And it literally makes us a badass. Woo! Yes. Yes.
Yummy. And Eva, why do we need erotically awakened women on this planet?
Yes. Well, great segue, because in part just because of what I said. So, you know, Naomi Wolf did a great job of elucidating this in her book, Vagina, which I highly recommend. But in looking at, you know, so many great female creators in the world, artists, scientists, writers, authors, painters, their greatest works have come from a period either during or immediately following a sexual awakening, you know, or an intense sexual experience where they were opened creatively and spiritually. And that's because this pleasure cocktail is coursing through their veins and the dopamine centers are lit up and they feel invincible. And so in order to get women into positions of leadership and power, they need to be, I believe, erotically alive. So whether or not they're sexually active, maybe they're in a long-term monogamous marriage, maybe they're single or what, like, it doesn't matter the frame that they're in. But to be erotically alive means to be connected to your root and to the wild primordial feminine. Right? If you like think about some of the most empowered, bodacious, irreverent, wild women that you know in your life. Think about who that might be. Maybe you just see them on social media, maybe you know someone personally. But they are typically women who are sexually empowered. And that doesn't mean, again, that they're sexually active or promiscuous or anything like that. That's like old paradigm. But what it means is that they're connected to their vital, like I'm doing this with my hands, it's like this trembling, this vital sense of aliveness and their wildness in the world. And to become connected to this sense of wild aliveness, there's very little you need to do because it's already encoded in our DNA. It's in our cellular structure. It's deep in our psyche. All you need to do is simply know what is not you. It's sort of like wipe away the social conditioning, wipe away the shame, the stigma, the socialization that you got from your family, your society, the media, the church, etc. And underneath that is a natural fucking she-beast, essentially. It's like this, like women are fierce. We're meant to rule. We are made to rule. We are fierce rulers. And in our Western patriarchal culture, we have written that out. I want to bring it back.
I'm such a yes to that. And yeah, I was saying like, just the difference in leadership between, you know, these men in the suits, and no, you know, no shaming to them. Many of them are doing wonderful work as well. But it's like, to me, I woke up and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a lot of the summit in my bed because that's the way I roll. And I feel like the feminine can just be more just alive and wild and not, and like in a lot more of a just, I don't give two shits state.
Yes, yes. Giving zero fucks, as I call it. which is amazing, like to bring back a little bit of science, because I love that. One of the greatest benefits of dopamine. So these chemicals interact with each other to synergize. So they have a synergistic effect. When dopamine, the reward circuits of the brain, lights up with opioids and endorphins and oxytocin, what we get, the end result, and this is proven, scientifically measured, you can look it up and Google it. The main effect it has on women specifically is that it makes them care less about what other people think of them. So, right, isn't that something we all want?
And all those old validation stories just fall away.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now this is a elixir, a superfood elixir that's already primed and ready to go in your brain. It's already in there. So there's nothing you need to do to reach out like, oh my God, I need someone to have sex with, or oh my God, it's all it takes is you connecting with what brings you pleasure consistently.
Yum.
Yum.
Can you give us any like little tips as well as how a woman can awaken her erotic energy in addition to like what types of little moments awaken your erotic?
Oh, okay. Let's talk about me. Yeah. Well, I feel like the way that I awaken my erotic aliveness would be very easy for most women to access. Dancing is an amazing way. Dancing. Now, I could launch into the science of why that works, but I won't. I'll just say, dance, lady, get your butt moving, and dance wildly and freely. You know, I've been teaching dance and movement for a really long time, and Shezza, I think maybe that's how we met, or?
Oh yeah, I came to your, what was it, a sacred dance.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm a big believer in movement, and now there's a difference between dancing, like doing your dance moves at the club. It's not gonna quite hit the spot. It's not gonna, like, doing your Zumba is amazing, keep doing that, or your hip hop dancing, that's great, but it's choreographed. So the first tip and tool I wanna give to you and to your women watching is to dance wildly and to break out of the expectation and the sense of like, how do I look? And the self-consciousness that typically comes with dancing, and allow your body to move itself. Like, go apeshit crazy in your living room in your underwear. Now's a really good time to do that because probably you're at home. So dancing is a very important way, and really anything that makes you happy and brings you pleasure and that is good for you. So eating copious amounts of chocolate, it's, tastes yummy, but ultimately it's going to take a toll on your body. The sugar is going to take a toll. Certainly self-pleasure. This is a great invitation to your viewers. Now, when I work with my women in my programs, we use the pleasure dial. I mentioned this already. So if the pleasure dial is like 0 to no turn on at all, to 10, the peak of climax. If you can self-pleasure yourself in those lower ranges, like up to 5 or 6, just throughout the day, like in the car, on your drive, or while you're on a Zoom call, because we're all on Zoom calls right now, or like, who knows what you're doing? Nobody can see. And just get yourself aroused a little bit. It's like you're taking sips of this nature's most potent vitamin. And yeah, and please, indulge in things that spike and arouse your erotic imagination, because we're here really to talk about the erotic, right? So like poetry, break out some Anais Nin, or some sexy poetry that makes you feel alive. Seduction is one of my favorite methods of erotic aliveness and really bringing that in. And what I mean by seduction is not necessarily like to seduce a person, but seduction is an art that we can apply really to anything in life. I apply it to my marketing, the way that I sell my programs and communicate my work is very seductive. It's very magnetic. And the qualities of seduction just includes you being so enraptured with yourself and your offering that people can't help. Yes, do a little interpretive dance. Okay, Shezza. I know you love this. Yes. Yeah, you got this down, Shezza. I mean, you're so naturally magnetic. It's because people are captivated by a woman in her pleasure.
Mm.
Right? So seduction, seduce yourself, seduce your cat, seduce your audience on social media. And yeah,
Ah.
that's where the erotic feminine lives.
Mhm.
And she lives in power. She lives in positions of power. I work with a lot of, women in high level leadership, school principals, corporate executives, very accomplished women who might be overly expressed in their masculine. And once I have them on this protocol of like really dropping into pleasure all throughout their day, they actually become more confident and more powerful and happier overall,
Mm.
and you might, huh?
Right. That's the key right there. It's like when you're happy, everything just like spirals from there. And this is like an embodied happiness, not just a mind happiness, but an embodied happiness.
Absolutely true. Yes, an embodied happiness. Yes.
And so also what I'm hearing you say is it's just like, because in the Tantra, we learn it's like just focusing on the genitals is so boring. It's great. It's like, don't get me wrong, I love my genitals and my yoni and all of that, but it's bringing that sexual energy into the whole body, and that's where we kind of feel more alive.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is such a big part of Tantra. And not just sexual Tantra, by the way, but classical Tantra as well, which is to distribute energy up and out of the pelvis through the body. And it's like the woman, for all of us, men and women, the pelvis is like a treasure trove of energy. It's like a repository. It's literally this bowl of power in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can use the tantric exercises, like squeezing the mula bandha and using the bandhas to like breathe up, the energy there, breathe up the arousal there, then it circulates through the body.
Mm.
And what's so cool now is we actually have the science for that. And we look at like the brain genital connection. And for women, there are 4 major nerve highways that connect the genitals to the brain. For men, there are 3.
Okay.
Yeah. And so in Tantra, we call it the inner flute.
Mm.
You might have heard that referenced before, the central channel of the body.
Mm-hmm.
Or the sushumna is what we call it in yogic terms. And so when we like wake up that circuitry, brain to genitals, then the whole body like zzz, comes alive. You feel electric. You feel powerful and online. Yeah.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
We were doing that breath work like you mentioned, and you were demonstrating so beautifully.
We're going to be doing a lot of that over these next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And now, let me ask you this. How do you feel about men also being like activating their erotic feminine sides, while also keeping in their masculine? I mean, can you share anything about that? Or how would you say in regards to this conversation to also empower men?
Yes, let's empower men also. Yeah, for men, the erotic feminine really lives in the subtlety and the attention to detail. So when I work with men around their erotic feminine, I don't call it that, but I do it anyway. It's around like being so mindfully and exquisitely connected to your sensations. And for men, this is so key, because often when it comes to lovemaking or even any kind of relating, men, their nerve highway is like a superhighway. So their communication between their brain and the genitals happens lightning speed like that. And so often men want to slow down that connection. They want to slow down their arousal.
Mm.
Right? And so when it comes to things like ejaculation control, stamina, staying power. It's really about like slowing down, breathing, and attending to the subtle sensations in the body. And in terms of specifically the erotic, I often work with men around engaging mystery, engaging mystery. So the masculine tends to be problem solving and to be linear, right? Yeah, you're moving it, Shezza. So to get men to actually savor anticipation and build up rather than going right for something, either whether it's sex or the woman or the date or what have you, is to actually maybe undulate a little bit. And let me tell you, this is going to really turn a woman on when a man can pendulate.
Yes.
Right? Yum.
Yeah.
Ah!
It's so yummier than these guys who are just like, okay, let's go straight for the bedroom. It's just like, yeah. Yeah. Can you undulate a little bit, please?
Great. Yep. Yeah, it's really powerful when a man can connect with that. Not just sexually, but in life in general, like the way that he romances a woman.
I love this. Now, I want to hear about your vision of women being in their power, and if we're collectively creating this on a large scale. What is your vision? What are you seeing?
Yes, I see women in leadership and authority. I see this happening more and more. I see the need for this happening now more than ever. And we need women showing up as women, not showing up overly expressed in their masculine, but to come into positions of power and leadership with a balance and being in touch with their erotic centers. And to be in touch with the erotic doesn't only mean being sexually turned on, but it's connected to like I said, the primordial life force, the lower energies, the darker energies of the feminine. There's so much power there that we tend to cut off or we relegate into the shadows. And gosh, when we can integrate those pieces of the feminine rather than to shame or control or repress, women are so fucking mighty. And I believe that this is the very long-term vast conspiracy to sublimate women, is to shame or to traumatize their sex. Right. And so you think about, I'm really into history. So I've read a lot about Cleopatra and, pre-Christianity, specifically in Egypt or in Greece and other parts of Europe and even the Middle East. So pre-Christianity, when women were leaders, which they often were leaders and very, very skillful, effective leaders, some of the most prosperous times throughout human history have been at the hands of female leaders. They did not marry. So female leaders had multiple lovers because it was known that the more sexually fulfilled a woman is, and not only in her sex, but in her heart, the more powerful she becomes. And so, the female leaders were like the temple priestesses. These are the most powerful women in the village, in the tribe, in the culture, are the women who had multiple partners. Now, I'm not saying you need to have multiple partners to be a good leader. I'm saying, again, that quality of sexual aliveness, the novelty that comes, the excitement that comes, it deeply nourishes a woman's body. And it cultivates a stronger sense of self. So those are the women. So Elizabeth Warren, I hope you're getting some, or like some of the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC. I hope you're getting like, these are really fucking badass, powerful women. And you can tell, with Alexandria, she's alive, isn't she? She has passion, she has intensity, she has voice, she's not afraid. These are the kinds of women I want leading.
Yummy. Yes. And I'm so grateful for you to be a leader in all of this. I mean, I am finding this so fascinating, so exciting. And I feel really turned on right now, just being in your presence, just talking to you and hearing you speak, because we're in a time when we have got to transition into a new way of being on this planet, or we're literally going to not be here anymore. And it involves exactly what you're talking about, a new way of being where power is connected with sexuality and eroticism. And then we're just more alive. And I feel like that's also when I was talking in the morning, when we're tapped into that creative energy of the universe, and things are then just flowing through us with ease, rather than in our head trying to get things done.
Yes. Yes. And that's the intangible quality of the feminine and the erotic feminine, is that there's this flow that can sometimes be hard to articulate, but it's a woman moving at her impulse and at her intuition and at her pleasing, and it winds, our power winds, it waxes and it wanes, it's cyclical, it's circular, it undulates, it curves. And so it's sometimes hard to grok that, like, how is that powerful? Because we are so steeped in patriarchy. But when we reclaim these parts of our feminine being and our eros, our life, then we become whole and integrated. And I feel like that's what you were alluding to a moment ago, is like, we become juicy and empowered. Yes, we become whole. And I've seen it in so many clients, and 23 years or something, I've been a psychotherapist. And I've seen in so many clients that they come to me after being brought back to life by connecting with their erotic self. Either it could be sex, or just an amazing poem that they read, or an amazing movie that they saw, how their creativity and their imagination is engaged. And we need women leading who have an engaged sense of creativity and imagination, right? So we can vision a different future. We all need those faculties engaged, because it allows us to see part of the pleasure cocktail, these hormones. And this is what oxytocin does when it's synergized with these other neurochemicals, is that it allows us to see the connectivity between all the parts of a system. And so when women are leaders, which we naturally are, we begin to see the tribe and all of the members within it, whether it's our congressional district or our family or our neighborhood or a dance floor. We see the intricate and subtle connections that are happening between all the people that are there. This is something specific to women and estrogen and oxytocin. And so what greater skill than that is to see the bird's eye view in the picture of the queendom. And how do I best serve this unique and idiosyncratic interlocking of pieces that are happening within this system? And how do I correct it so that it's functioning optimally and all members are thriving? This is the feminine leadership way.
Yes. And I really want to say that I'm really proud of my summit that I've just put, like, kind of thrown together, because I feel like this is really coming from that place. And I'm just so grateful that you said yes to being here and sharing yourself and sharing your gifts and your incredible intelligence, which is extremely erotic. I mean, I'm feeling turned on. What can I say? And I think that that's like, that's kind of what we're talking about as well, is just like that turn on. That's not just about like in bed, pussy, it's the turn on of being alive. So thank you so much for being here and sharing that. Please, how do you want people to get in touch with you, Eva?
Come talk to me. Let's keep this conversation going. I'm at evaclay.com, and maybe we can, put it in the chat or whatever in the notes. But drop me a line. Let me know what you thought of this, and let's talk.
Yay.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yay. Thank you so much, Eva, for being here. You're such a goddess, powerhouse, erotic, yum. Yum. Mwah.
Mwah.
Mwah.